Commander Lee Hyun's hands gripped the edge of the tactical console as red warning lights bathed the observation deck in crimson shadows. The holographic display showed something that defied belief, an entire solar system simply vanishing from existence. Where the Ulterian homeworld had thrived just hours ago, now only empty void remained. "This can't be right," whispered Communications Officer Young Subin, her fingers dancing across her control panel. Alteria Prime had a population of 12 billion. Their planetary shields could withstand a supernova. Lee Hyun said nothing. He'd seen the recordings from the outer monitoring stations before they too went silent. The Devourers didn't destroy worlds, they consumed them. Every atom, every particle of matter, absorbed and converted into more of themselves. It was like watching cancer spread across the galaxy. Lieutenant Park Mina burst through the bridge doors, her uniform disheveled from running. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from 17 sectors now. The Corellian defense fleet just went dark. 23 dreadnoughts, gone in 40 minutes. The tactical display zoomed out, showing the expanding wave of destruction. Each red marker represented a dead world, a silent system. The pattern was clear. The machines were moving in a coordinated sweep, leaving nothing behind. "How fast are they adapting?" Lee Hyun asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Every engagement teaches them something new," Park Mina replied, pulling up combat recordings. "The Nexari hit them with quantum disruptors. The machines absorbed the technology and started using it against them within hours. The Vorthan Empire tried biological warfare. The constructs just incorporated the viruses into their arsenal. On the main screen, they watched footage from the Battle of Kepler Station. Massive alien warships, elegant and deadly, fired their most advanced weapons at the approaching Devourer fleet. The first few enemy constructs were destroyed, their metallic hulls cracking under concentrated fire. But then, something terrifying happened. The remaining machines began to change. Their armor adapted, their shields shifted frequency, and within minutes they were immune to everything the defenders could throw at them. "They're not just machines," observed senior analyst Cho Min-woo, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're learning, evolving. Each battle makes them stronger." The communication system crackled to life with desperate voices from across the galaxy. The proud Zephyrian Confederacy, masters of energy manipulation, reported their entire fleet consumed. The ancient ethereal collective, beings of pure thought, found their psychic attacks useless against mechanical minds. Even the warrior clans of Korax, who had never known defeat, were fleeing their homeworlds in terror. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral station of Harmony Point, panic ruled supreme. Ambassador Velnoth of the Crystalline. Hierarchy slammed his translucent fist on the conference table. "Our finest scientists worked for millennia to perfect our defensive systems. These abominations cut through them like they were paper." High Counselor Zarketh, an ancient being whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, spoke with trembling voice. "The old records speak of this, a darkness that came before, when the galaxy was young. We thought them myths, cautionary tales to frighten children." "They're real enough now," growled War Chief Thrax, his reptilian features twisted in fury. "My warriors' blood boiled in their veins as these machines drained the very life from their bodies. What manner of weapon fights against such enemies?" In the corner of the vast chamber, largely ignored by the assembled alien dignitaries, stood Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the Human Observation Corps. His modest uniform looked plain beside the elaborate ceremonial dress of the other species. Most of the council members had forgotten humanity even existed, a young species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. But Kim Tae-ho was listening to everything. His augmented reality contact lenses recorded every detail, every tactical report, every description of Devourer capabilities. Earth's intelligence network had been secretly monitoring galactic affairs for decades, cataloging strengths and weaknesses of every major power. The Galactic Council had always viewed humans as primitives. While other species developed energy, weapons that could crack moons, humans still used kinetic projectiles. While aliens perfected shield technology, humans built thicker armor. The Council saw this as backward thinking, crude solutions from a crude species, They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the emergency session dissolved into arguments and accusations, Kim Tae-ho quietly activated his secure communication link. The message he sent was brief, but carried the weight of humanity's survival. Operation Shadowfall is authorized. Begin construction of the Indomitable. On Earth, deep within the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, Admiral Park Seo-jun received the transmission. Around him, holographic displays showed the galaxy burning, but his expression remained calm. Humanity had been preparing for this day since they first detected the Devourer presence in deep space 20 years ago. "Gentlemen," he said to the assembled officers, "it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you corner a human." Captain Choi Min-ho walked into the makeshift command center that had been hastily constructed in the cargo bay of the human space station New Seoul. The sight before him would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Dozens of alien species that had once ruled the galaxy now sat huddled together like refugees after a natural disaster. The Zephyrian delegates floated in their environmental suits, their gas-based bodies shimmering with colors that betrayed their emotional state. Right now, those colors were the deep purples and grays of despair. Fleet Commander Veltar, whose crystalline body normally reflected light in brilliant patterns, looked dull and cracked. His people had been the first to encounter the Devourers, and the trauma showed in every facet of his being. "Captain Choi," Veltar began, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones that made Zephyrian speech sound like music, "we appreciate your species offering sanctuary, but surely you understand the futility of resistance. The Devourers consumed our entire armada in less than a day." Behind him, Warchief Keth of the Korthan Empire shifted restlessly. The massive reptilian warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide bearing fresh scars from recent battles. "The human speaks truth about one thing. Your energy weapons are toys compared to Korthan plasma cannons, yet even our most powerful ships were torn apart like paper." Captain Choi Min-ho remained standing, while the alien commanders sat or floated in their various configurations. His simple blue uniform looked plain next to their elaborate armor and ceremonial garments, but his eyes held something theirs had lost: confidence. "Your kinetic weapons are primitive," sneered Fleet Commander Veltar, his crystalline carapace clicking with disdain as he gestured toward the holographic display showing human ship designs. "Energy shields will deflect your crude projectiles. Your missiles explode harmlessly against our barriers. How can such backwards technology possibly succeed where our advanced sciences failed?" The other alien commanders murmured agreement. Admiral Neksh of the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell, pulsed with condescension. "Humans still fire metal bullets through magnetic coils. Our children abandoned such weapons 10,000 years ago, Captain." Choi Min-ho let them finish their complaints before responding with infuriating calm. "Perhaps you're right about our weapons being primitive, but tell me, how well did your energy shields work against machines that can adapt to any frequency?" The silence that followed was deafening. Veltar's crystalline form dimmed further. Warchief Keth's massive claws scraped against the metal floor. They all knew the answer. Their shields had become useless within hours of first contact. "Doctor." Yeon So-ra chose that moment to step forward, her tablet displaying holographic data that filled the air above the conference table. The petite scientist looked almost childlike next to the towering aliens, but her voice carried absolute authority. "We've been studying your encounters with the Devourers for weeks now," she said, manipulating the hologram to show battle recordings. "Every engagement follows the same pattern. You hit them with your best weapons, destroy a few constructs, then watch in horror as they adapt and become immune." The hologram showed the destruction of the Nexari homeworld. Elegant alien warships fired beams of pure energy that could melt asteroids. The first wave of Devourers fell to the assault, their metallic hulls cracking and burning. But then, the remaining machines began to change. Their armor shifted, their hull plating reconfigured, and within minutes they were absorbing the energy attacks and using them to power their own weapons. "The problem isn't that your weapons are weak, Doctor," Yoon continued. "The problem is that they're predictable. Energy follows laws of physics. Plasma has consistent properties. Quantum disruptors operate on mathematical principles. The Devourers can learn these patterns and counter them, she gestured, and the hologram changed to show human weapons testing. Crude-looking missiles tumbled through space, their flight paths erratic and chaotic. Kinetic projectiles fired from railguns followed seemingly random trajectories. Nuclear warheads detonated at distances that made no tactical sense. But they've never encountered human warfare, Dr. Yoon said with a slight smile. Chaos, unpredictability, and weapons they'll never see coming. We don't just build weapons, we build dozens of different weapons that work in completely different ways. Lieutenant Park Jin-woo burst through the command center doors, his face flushed from running. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up massive contacts. 67 Devourer constructs, each one the size of a city, bearing down on the Kepler. Colonies. The alien commanders recoiled in terror. Some had seen constructs this large before. They were the ones that consumed entire planets. Veltar's crystalline body began to crack from stress. We must flee immediately. No force in the galaxy can stand against such numbers. But Captain Choi Min-ho was already moving to the tactical display, his fingers dancing across the controls. The hologram shifted to show the approaching Devourer fleet, massive geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly, their surfaces crawling with smaller construction units that never stopped building and modifying. Actually, Min-ho said, his smile becoming predatory, this is exactly what we've been waiting for. Computer, activate defense grid, Tango 7. Throughout human space, hidden installations that had been disguised as mining platforms and cargo, depots suddenly came alive. Weapon ports opened on seemingly innocent freight haulers. Civilian transports dropped their disguises to reveal military-grade armor and enough firepower to level mountains. War Chief Keth stared at the display in amazement. These are your merchants, your cargo ships. Every human vessel is built to fight, Min-ho explained. We learned early that in a hostile universe there's no such thing as a non-combatant. Our freighters carry nuclear mines. Our passenger liners mount railgun batteries. Our research stations are actually fortress platforms. As if summoned by his words, the first human ships began moving to intercept the Devourer vanguard. They didn't move in the elegant formations favored by alien fleets. Instead, they scattered like startled birds, each ship following a completely different tactical doctrine. Admiral Neksh pulsed with confusion. Your fleet has no coordination, no unified strategy. How can such chaos succeed? Captain Choi Min-ho's grin widened. You're about to see why humans never stopped building warships after we reached the stars. We didn't just prepare for one kind of war. We prepared for every kind of war. The fabric of space twisted and tore as something massive ripped through hyperspace. What emerged defied every convention of starship design the galaxy had ever known. The Indomitable didn't glide gracefully into normal space like the elegant vessels of other species. It crashed through reality like a sledgehammer breaking glass. At 15 kilometers long and nearly 4 kilometers wide, the human Dreadnought looked less like a spaceship and more like a flying fortress. Its hull was a patchwork of armor plating, weapon mounts, and structural reinforcements that spoke of pure function over form. Where alien vessels were smooth curves and artistic lines, the Indomitable was all angles and brutal efficiency. Captain, Song Jae-min stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the tactical display. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet precision of professionals who had trained for this moment their entire lives. The bridge itself looked nothing like the sterile, computer-controlled command centers of alien warships. Everything could be operated manually if needed, with physical switches and mechanical backups for every system. Captain, we're receiving panicked transmissions from the refugee fleet, reported Communications Officer Lim Hai-won. The Zephyrian flagship is requesting immediate evacuation assistance. Their shields are failing. Through the main view screen, they could see the ongoing battle. Dozens of alien ships, their once proud hulls now scarred and burning, tried desperately to hold formation against the approaching Devourer constructs. The enemy machines moved with terrifying coordination, their geometric forms shifting and adapting as they absorbed each new attack. Look at that, muttered Navigation Officer Park Dong-hyun, pointing at the tactical display. The Devourers are learning from every shot the aliens fire. Their shields are already adapting to counter the Nexari quantum torpedoes. It was true. The first few quantum torpedoes had torn massive holes in the lead Devourer construct, but now the same weapons were being absorbed harmlessly into the machine's hull, their energy being converted and redirected back at the alien fleet. The Devourers weren't just defending, they were getting stronger with each passing moment. Captain Song watched this deadly dance for another few seconds before speaking. "All batteries, commence firing," he ordered quietly. What happened next would be talked about in legends for generations to come. The Indomitable didn't fire elegant energy beams or sophisticated particle weapons. Instead, it unleashed hell itself upon the Devourer formation. Nuclear warheads, hundreds of them, streaked across space in seemingly random patterns. Some were set to detonate on impact, others were programmed to explode at specific distances, and still others were designed to burrow into enemy hulls before detonating. The Devourer's adaptive programming tried to counter the nuclear threat, but how do you adapt to weapons that work by splitting atoms? Railgun batteries fired solid tungsten, projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic harpoons were even more brutal, massive spears of hardened steel that punched through Devourer armor and dragged smaller constructs into collision courses with larger ones. When the enemy machines tried to adapt their hull composition to deflect kinetic impacts, the humans simply fired projectiles made of different materials. "Sir, we're registering massive confusion in the Devourer network," reported Tactical Officer Han Yu-jin, his voice filled with barely contained excitement. "Their adaptive algorithms are overloading. They can't counter this many different weapon systems simultaneously." The first Devourer construct to die under human fire didn't simply explode. It came apart like a puzzle box, its carefully engineered components scattering across space as nuclear fire consumed its internal systems. The remaining machines tried to analyze the attack pattern, but there wasn't one. Human weapons were designed for chaos, not precision. "Sir, the lead construct is attempting to board us," Han Yu-jin reported, his tone becoming more urgent. "They're firing some kind of tunneling device at our starboard hull." Through the view screen they could see the boarding torpedo, a writhing mass of metallic tentacles that was boring through the Indomitable's armor like it was made of paper. Sparks flew as the alien device carved its way deeper into the ship's structure. Captain Song smiled grimly. "Let them come," he replied. "Chief Petty Officer Bayek, deploy the welcoming committee." Throughout the ship's corridors, human Marines had been waiting for exactly this moment. Sergeant Lee Da-un crouched behind a makeshift barricade in Corridor 7, her assault rifle loaded with depleted uranium rounds. Around her, dozens of other Marines clutched weapons that would have looked primitive to any alien observer. Shotguns, flamethrowers, explosive charges, and combat knives. "Remember your training," she whispered into her comm unit. "These things are machines, but they think like machines. Do something unpredictable, and you'll confuse their targeting systems." The first Devourer drones that breached the hull were nightmarish things, spider-like constructs of living metal that moved with inhuman grace. Their optical sensors glowed red as they scanned the corridor, their adaptive programming cataloging every detail of human defensive positions. What they weren't prepared for was Corporal Kim Woo-jin rolling a grenade down the hallway while shouting at the top of his lungs, or Private Yu Minji firing her shotgun one-handed, while using her other hand to operate a flamethrower. The Devourer drones had algorithms for dealing with coordinated military tactics, but they had no reference for dealing with controlled chaos. Meanwhile, outside the ship, the battle was turning into something resembling organized mayhem. Smaller human vessels darted between the Indomitable's massive gun batteries, using the Dreadnought's bulk as cover while they harassed the Devourer formation with hit-and-run attacks. The refugee fleet watched in amazement as human tactics unfolded. Captain Choi Min-ho's assault frigates moved like angry hornets, never staying in one place long enough for the Devourers to target them effectively. When the enemy machines tried to pursue, they found themselves flying into pre-positioned minefields or getting caught in crossfire from multiple directions. "Impossible," whispered Fleet Commander Veltar from his observation post. "How can such crude tactics be so effective?" The shadow of the great Dreadnought fell across the battlefield as it continued its methodical advance through the Devourer formation. Each step forward was paid for in nuclear fire and kinetic fury, but the Indomitable kept moving, its massive bulk absorbing damage that would have crippled any alien vessel. Deep inside the captured Devourer construct, engineer specialist Oh Junseo crawled through passages that shouldn't exist. The alien machine's interior was a nightmare of living metal and pulsing conduits that seemed to grow and shift as he watched. Strange lights flickered along the walls, like neurons firing in a mechanical brain, and the air itself hummed with energy that made his teeth ache. "This is insane," he muttered to himself, following the crude map that human intelligence had pieced together from previous boarding operations. "I'm literally inside the nervous system of a planet-eating robot. Behind him, Marine Colonel Kang Min-kyung and her assault team provided security, their weapons trained on every shadow. The Devourer construct's immune system was already responding to their presence. Antibody drones the size of dogs were crawling through the ventilation systems, seeking the human intruders. "Junseo, we've got movement in the walls, Colonel." Kang whispered into her comm. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster." Oh Junseo had reached the central processing node, a chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with alien thought patterns. This was the brain of the construct, the place where all its adaptive learning was processed and stored. In his backpack, he carried humanity's secret weapon, a data spike loaded with the most chaotic, unpredictable computer viruses human programmers had ever created. "Almost got it," he muttered, his fingers flying over circuits that seemed to respond to his touch by shifting and changing. The Devourer technology was trying to adapt to his presence, learning from every movement he made. "Come on, just need to find the right connection point." The walls around them began to pulse faster, like a heartbeat under stress. Mechanical tentacles started emerging from hidden openings, reaching toward the human intruders with deadly intent. "Work faster," urged Colonel Kang, her rifle switching between targets as more antibody drones poured into the chamber. "We've got 30 seconds before this thing's immune system burns us out." Oh Junseo found the connection he needed, a data port. That looked almost organic, like a metallic flower with petals that opened to receive his spike. The moment he inserted the device, alarms began blaring throughout the construct. Red warning lights bathed everything in crimson as the alien machine realized what was happening. The virus uploaded successfully, and Oh Junseo felt a moment of savage satisfaction as he watched the alien systems begin to convulse. But then the real show started. Across 17 sectors of space, something unprecedented began to happen. The virus didn't just attack the single construct they had infiltrated, it spread through the entire Devourer network like wildfire. The machine's greatest strength, their interconnected hive mind, became their greatest weakness as human chaos code raced through their communication links. On the bridge of a Devourer mothership, mechanical minds that had operated in perfect harmony for millions of years suddenly found themselves filled with contradictory commands. Attack protocols conflicted with defensive subroutines. Navigation systems started plotting collision courses with friendly units. Weapon targeting computers began identifying other Devourer constructs as enemies. "It's working," Oh Junseo breathed, watching his portable scanner as the virus propagated through the network. They're turning on each other, indeed they were. Across the battlefield, massive Devourer constructs that had been advancing in perfect formation suddenly opened fire on their neighbors. City-sized machines that had consumed entire planets began tearing each other apart with the same ruthless efficiency they had once used against organic life. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Communications Officer Ryu Hye-jin was coordinating the largest counteroffensive in galactic history. Her fingers danced across multiple control panels as she managed communications with hundreds of ships across dozens of species. "Zephyrian Fleet Command, this is Indomitable. Actual." She spoke into her headset while simultaneously typing commands to other units. "Your energy weapons are useless against adaptive shields, but they work great as welding torches. Start. Attaching human armor plating to your hulls." The refugee fleets had been watching human tactics with growing amazement. Now they were eagerly adopting them. elegant Nexari cruisers sprouted ugly but effective kinetic weapon batteries. Proud Corthan. Warships had their automated systems ripped out and replaced with manual controls that couldn't be hacked or adapted against. Ethereal collective vessels, cease using your quantum processors for targeting, Ryu Hyejin continued. Switch to the backup mechanical computers we're transmitting blueprints for. Yes, they're slower and less accurate, but the Devourers can't predict mechanical randomness. The most dramatic changes were happening to the boarding tactics. Instead of sending in elite soldiers with energy weapons, the alien fleets were now deploying teams armed with tools from human hardware stores. Hammers, crowbars, acetylene torches, and explosive charges proved devastatingly effective against enemies that had no algorithms for dealing with such primitive approaches. Captain Song Jae-min stood before the main tactical display, watching as the tide of battle shifted across the entire galaxy. The holographic map showed red markers, Devourer positions, flickering and changing to green as constructs either turned on each other or fell to the expanding counter-offensive. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim," said Intelligence Officer Shin Kyung-ho. "The virus has reached the Devourer staging areas. They're destroying their own supply lines." But Captain Song's expression remained grim. "The Devourers will adapt to this eventually. Their central intelligence will isolate the infected units and develop countermeasures. We've bought ourselves time, nothing more." Navigation Officer Park Dong-hyun looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command. Admiral Kim Tae-ho is requesting immediate strategic consultation." Song activated the communication link, and Admiral Kim's weathered face appeared on the screen. Behind him, the Earth Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as staff officers coordinated the galaxy-wide battle. "Jae-min," the Admiral said without preamble, "our intelligence indicates the Devourer Central Intelligence is located in the galactic core. It's a massive construct, possibly the size of a small moon. If we can destroy it, the entire network will collapse." Captain Song nodded slowly. He had suspected this moment would come. "What's the tactical situation?" "Bad," Admiral Kim replied honestly. "The core construct is protected by thousands of defensive platforms. It's also adapting, faster than the outer units. Our virus barely slowed it down. This will be a suicide mission." Around the bridge, Song's crew listened in silence. They had known from the beginning that the Indomitable might not survive this war. The great Dreadnought had been built for one purpose: to buy humanity and its allies enough time to find a way to win. Captain Song looked around at his officers, men and women who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. Each face showed determination, mixed with the quiet acceptance of soldiers who understood the cost of victory. "Navigation, plot a course for the galactic core," he commanded. "It's time to cut the head off this snake." As the Indomitable began its turn toward the galaxy's center, smaller human ships formed up around it. They wouldn't all make it to the final battle, but they would make sure their flagship had every chance to complete its mission. The shadow of the great Dreadnought fell across thousands of Allied vessels as the combined fleet began its race against time toward the heart of the galaxy. The galactic core was a graveyard of light and metal. Thousands of wrecked ships from dozens of species floated in the cosmic winds, their hulls torn open and their crews long dead. At the center of this devastation stood something that defied comprehension, a construct so massive it had its own gravitational field, so complex that entire civilizations could have lived within its mechanical depths. The Devourer Central Intelligence was the size of a small moon, its surface crawling with defensive platforms that moved like living things. Weapon batteries the size of skyscrapers tracked every approaching vessel, while swarms of fighter-sized drones formed protective clouds around the mothership's critical systems. Captain Song Jae-min stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his hands gripping the command rail as he surveyed the approaching nightmare. His great ship looked nothing like the pristine Dreadnought that had first emerged from hyperspace months ago. Armor plating hung in tatters, entire weapon batteries had been shot away, and hull breaches sealed with emergency patches gave the vessel a patchwork appearance that spoke of countless battles survived. "Captain, "We're receiving final transmissions from the fleet," reported Communications Officer Ryu Hyejin, her voice tight with emotion. "The Zephyrian survivors are requesting permission to form the Honor Guard. They want to escort us to the target." Through the view screen, Song could see the remnants of the Galactic fleet forming up around his ship. Proud vessels that had once ruled the stars now flew as escorts to a human dreadnought. The irony wasn't lost on him, but there was no time for reflection. "Grant their request," he said quietly. "Every ship that can still fight deserves to be part of this." Engineer Nam Su-young looked up from her damage control station, her face streaked with grease and exhaustion. "Captain, I'm rerouting power from life support to weapons. We'll have maybe 20 minutes of breathable air once I make the switch." "Do it," Song replied without hesitation. Around the bridge, his crew began putting on emergency oxygen masks. If they were going to die, they would die fighting at maximum capacity. Navigator Shin Woo-jin worked frantically at his station, plotting intercept courses and calculating impact velocities. "Sir, I'm programming a collision course with the enemy mothership. At our current speed, we'll hit their central core in 18 minutes. The tactical display showed their approach vector, a straight line through a maze of defensive positions. That would have been considered impossible by any sane military strategist. But sanity had stopped being relevant the moment the Devourers started consuming entire star systems. "Sir, we have one shot at this," reported Lieutenant Colonel Park Ji-hoon from the Marine Bay, his voice crackling over the internal communications system. "If we can plant the final virus in their core intelligence, the entire network will collapse, but we need to get a boarding team directly into their central processing chamber." Park Ji-hoon had volunteered to lead the final assault, even though everyone knew it was a suicide mission. The Marines under his command were the best humanity had to offer, men and women who had signed up knowing they would never see home again. Captain Song nodded grimly. The plan was simple in its desperation. The Indomitable would ram the Devourer mothership, using its massive bulk to punch through the enemy's defenses. In those few moments before the ship was destroyed, the Marines would have to fight their way to the core and upload the virus that would bring down the entire network. "All hands, this is the captain," Song announced over the ship's communication system. His voice carried to every compartment, every battle station, every corner of the great vessel. "It has been an honor serving with you. We came to the stars as explorers and pioneers. Today we stand as guardians of all life in the galaxy." He paused, looking around at his bridge crew, young men and women who had given everything in service to humanity's desperate gamble, for Earth, for humanity, for every world that still burns in the darkness. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Devourer mothership, its remaining weapons firing continuously. Nuclear warheads and kinetic projectiles streaked ahead of the Dreadnought, clearing a path through the defensive swarms. The enemy responded with overwhelming firepower, turning space around the human ship into a storm of energy and metal. Hull plating peeled away like flower petals as the ship took hit after hit. Entire sections were vaporized by weapons that could crack planets, but still the Indomitable pressed forward. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically as atmosphere vented into space, while damage control teams fought fires that burned without oxygen. 30 seconds to impact, Navigator Shin announced, his voice remarkably calm for someone about to die. "All Marines to boarding positions," Captain Song ordered. "Godspeed, Colonel Park." The collision was less an impact than an explosion that temporarily created a new star in the galactic core. The Indomitable's massive hull punched through the Devourer mothership's defenses like a bullet through paper, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of every living being in the galaxy. In the chaos that followed, Lieutenant Colonel Park Ji-hoon led his Marines through the breach. They fought their way through corridors filled with mechanical horrors, using flamethrowers and explosive charges against enemies that had been designed to counter the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Sergeant Kim Min-jun fell, first buying his squad precious seconds with a grenade that took out an entire swarm of antibody drones. Corporal Lee Hyo-jin died holding a choke point while her teammates advanced toward the core. One by one, the Marines paid the ultimate price for each meter of progress. Colonel Park was alone when he finally reached the Central Intelligence Chamber, AA. vast space filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with the accumulated knowledge of a million-year-old civilization. His hand shook as he inserted the final virus, knowing that this simple action would either save the galaxy or condemn it to eternal darkness. The virus uploaded successfully, and Park had just enough time to smile before the chamber filled with cleansing fire. Across the galaxy, something miraculous began to happen. Devourer constructs that had been advancing on defenseless worlds suddenly stopped mid-stride. Their weapons fell silent, their engines powered down, and then, one by one, they began to shut down completely as the virus spread through their network, like a chain reaction of digital death. In the final moments, as the Indomitable and its crew were consumed by the explosion that would reshape the galactic core, Captain Song transmitted his last message. The shadow falls, the light returns. The explosion that followed could be seen from 17 star systems. When the debris cleared, the galaxy was silent, not with death but with peace. The Devourer network had collapsed completely, leaving behind only inert metal that would slowly be reclaimed by the cosmos. In the years that followed, survivors would gather to remember the sacrifice of the Indomitable and its crew. They would tell stories of how humanity, the youngest and supposedly weakest species in the galaxy, had stood alone against the darkness when all seemed lost. They would say that in humanity's darkest hour, when ancient evils threatened to consume everything that lived and breathed, a single dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars and reminded the universe that sometimes the greatest strength comes from those who refuse to yield. The end.